Now, welcome to Merriam-Webster's Vocabulary Builder, and this is a really interesting one too, so let's get started with. Today we're starting off with Unit 2, and let's get started with. Firstly here, our first root here is mania. Mania basically means madness, but we don't actually use this word in the sense of madness at all, most of the time. Sure, a maniac could be someone who's mentally ill. However, it could also be a person who's just severely obsessed with something, like you're like a maniac in the study of science. That means you're just really obsessed with it. Doesn't mean you have a mental issue. It just means you're really into it and you're really obsessed with it. You're a maniac in like the field of magic science. Like not a witch, but like you're not a wizard or you're a witch, but you're just a scientist studying magic. Like you cast magic using science. That's like you're having a mania about that. That's actually something else too. So mania, madness. That's actually where we get all this from. Next up we have kleptomania, and then we have dipsomania, megalomaniac, and egomaniac. Kleptomaniac is also like where we get all this, and egomaniac is just a person who's just really into him or herself. Like me. He's like he or she is all like me. They only talk about oneself. And megalomania, like a term meaning like power hungry, mentally ill enough so that you'll be a power hungry. However, the thing about this is that, well, there's actually not much about it too. Like megalomaniac, it's just usually a derogatory term for leaders who have just become corrupt and are really powerful. It doesn't mean they're mentally ill. So some leaders like Stalin are pretty mentally ill, and when they become megalomaniac, and once they become megalomaniac and they're mentally ill, they could do weird things. Like Stalin literally murdered or like made all of his doctors disappear, and the ones that remained were hidden. Next up we have psych. Psych, it means breath, life, and soul. And psych, it actually derives from the Greek word psych with an E at the end, and that means breathe, life, soul. We also turned that Greek word into an English word, psych, like the psychology of someone. Next up, psychedelic. Next up we have psychomatic, and that's all really good and nice and good too. A psychotherapist is what's easy because it's just a therapist who goes ahead and gives you psychological treatment. She's the person who you go to when you have a mental breakdown or something, which is something a lot of people have to experience every day. So this is a really good paying job if you ask me, if there was only one of these psychotherapists in the world. Our third root is sept, which basically means you're taking or seizing something. Like reception, intercept, perceptile, and susceptible. Like if you're intercepting something, that means you've got something that was meant to be given to someone else. And reception is just how you're being welcomed somewhere. And perceptile, well, that's another word. And susceptile basically means you're really easy to fool into doing something. Next up we have fin, the end or boundary, and this is where we get like the words confined, definitive, finite, infinite, those kind of things. So if I continue on with all this, there's something here. So fin basically means end and boundary. Like fin is basically used in some movies to go ahead, and it's also the French word for the end. Its root is used in the words confined, definitive, finite, and infinitesimal. You probably know what some of those roots are and words are. Our fifth Latin root is deject, jacker, or basically throw and hurl. So you get interject, you get conjecture, projection, and trajectory. Like trajectory is where you're going to land in. And interject is just like you're interrupting someone, but you're like replacing someone with someone else. Projection is just a simulation or fake saying that's projected onto a wall. Next thing is like another Latin root. It means it's called tract. It basically means tract. Like you're dragging or drawing or something. So you're like traction, retract, protracted, and intractable. You're like doing things that no person ever done. Next up, you have duck and duct. The duke leader. So yeah, here we go. So here, duck and duct actually come from the Latin word ducere, and it basically means conductive, deduction, induce, seduction, and those kind of things. Next up we have sequa. Sequa basically means to follow, and it basically means you're like sequential, and yeah, all those sorts of things. Sequential, subsequent, consubstantial, non sequitur. Those are all pretty new words for this guy, I'm guessing. And finally, 8 words from myths. We'll start off with the first one. An Apollonian. Apollonian is like, sure, that guy's really good, alright, but the thing about this is that after a century of romantic emotion, some composer actually adopted a more of a of Apollo's style. In Greek mythology, Apollo was the god of the sun, light, prophecy, and music, and the most revered of all gods. And partly because of the writings of Nietzsche, these guys, we readers, actually are now will often think of Apollo in contrast calling of Apollotes, Apollician. That would be different. But hey, it could have been better the next day. Alright, next day we have that's about it. Next up we have Delphic. Delphic basically means unclear, ambiguous, and you're really confusing. Another one, that's about it. Yeah, to be honest, that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, I skipped a few. And next on we have Dionysian. Dionysian basically means you're frenzied and delirious, and you're all and you basically fought the nurses as if they said you did. Jolly, however, does something else. The grandfather was jolly and sociable as their garden. Everything was quiet and withdrawn, and everything would just go back to its way in peace. So yeah. Well, next up, jovial. Here we go. Now, this girl's grandfather actually comes from a loyal and sociable as her grandmother, and they quiet and withdraw. Next up, we have Mercurial. Mercurial basically means having rapid and unpredictable changes of moods. Or if you suddenly show your mom that you got an F- when you 10 minutes ago you saw an A, she will forget about the entire A and she'll only remember the F-, which is a bad thing if you ask me. It's only remembering all this. That's just BS, man. This is so uncool. That's pretty much it. That's actually how all this works. Hopefully it works out by now, and if it doesn't, well, yeah. Well, that's about it. So hopefully you guys actually did enjoy this episode. Oh yeah, one more thing. Olympian. Olympian basically means a person who's lofty, superior, and detached. That doesn't sound weird, right? And finally, last but not least, is venereal. Venereal basically means you're having to do with sexual intercourse or disease transmitted by it. That sexual intercourse, those kind of things. And that's pretty much it. So, hopefully you can do something useful. And she basically said yes. And that's about it. That's the end of Merriam-Webster's Unit 2 Vocabulary Builder. So hopefully you guys actually did enjoy this episode. I hope to see you guys soon. Until next time, shut up, peace, bye-bye, and wear a helmet.